Fantastic. And I'm going to share the screen with you guys. All right. So, okay. All right, awesome. So the goal setting session and Fuel for More in 2021, this is the actual nutrition program for the Healthy Shine. So Fuel for More nutrition program. It took me a long time to really think about what I wanted to name my nutrition program. And this really had come up a lot in a lot of my sessions with my clients over the last couple months. And we were constantly talking about, what are you fueling for in this life? You have one life to live. What are you going to fuel it for? And that can be figuratively, what are you going to fuel everything else for? And what are you actually going to fuel your body for too? So really aligning that everyday nutrition with those performance goals that I love to talk about with you all. So really quick, if you guys don't know about me, I wanted to include this slide with you guys. If you've seen it before, I'm very, very sorry. But I do find that, again, just like most of you guys, it's really hard for me to talk about myself. I love to talk about my clients more than myself, but really quickly, I was a recent 2020 US Olympic Marathon qualifier. I love to help runners who are wanting to learn about fueling and that feel that they are under fueling or they're just stuck. They don't know what to eat, how much to eat, when to change their nutrition and so forth whenever they're starting to train for a marathon. So I really like to help each person really reach their personal record with realistic and sustainable nutrition. Again, I am somebody that really likes to apply everyday nutrition into your life and really help you figure out what does that look like for the long term. I don't like to prescribe restrictive diets or things that make it really hard for people to do. You're never going to find me encouraging a particular meal that's going to cost you $20 to make. I'm going to be somebody that's going to give you that very practical and realistic thing to do for yourself. Again, I always like to take everybody through my journey. So I had an unhealthy obsession with food and exercise, which landed me into my current profession. I ended up seeking help with a dietitian, and they really helped me understand my own nutritional needs, how to apply them. And I also sought help from my therapist at that time when I was a collegiate athlete to help me understand more about who I was and what did running really mean for me, and finding the joy in intuitive movement and mindful movement. I started to move forward a lot over the last couple of years. After becoming a dietitian, I started to really understand what did I want to work with and who are the people that I wanted to work alongside. And that always came back to runners. I always wanted to work with runners. So 100% of my clients are runners to this day. And it is probably, I think, my dream job. I always told my boyfriend that I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I'm going to work just with runners. They're my people. I understand them. And I am one of them. So it just so transpired over this last couple of months during quarantine. And it has been so fun to really understand more of these things with you guys. So again, thank you for being here. Again, one of my biggest mottos for everything that I do is helping each person believe that harmony in life starts by making peace with what's on your plate. This even goes for not just my female runners who have maybe had an eating disorder in the past, but a lot of my runners who are just unsure of which option to take or what to do whenever they are looking for food. They find that they stress over it, over particular things, or just really trying to understand what do they need on a daily basis so they can actually do the thing that they love the most. So one of the first topics that we're going to go through is goal creating and setting. So again, if you missed my little spiel before we started, I encourage for everybody to take out a sheet of paper, a blank paper, a notebook paper, or even a Google Doc, something like that. If you are on your phone watching this, definitely take out that note section. And we're going to start to dive deeper into your goal setting and the creating process of it. So one of the main things that I always ask each runner are, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve in the next 3 months, 6 months to 1 year? What does that look like for you? I always encourage that a client writes down the 2 to 3 goals that they want to work toward over the next 6 to 12 months. I like to go beyond 3 months most of the time for most of my clients, just so I understand what am I going to help them navigate past the 3 months? What do I want them to also learn and be able to do independently for long term, not just for a quarter, a small season of their life or one training cycle? What do I want them to also take with them when we start to work together? Is there a particular nutritional goal that you have? Do you have anemia? Do you need to raise up your iron levels? Are you a new plant-based athlete? Do you want to learn more about plant-based proteins and things like that? Those are definite goals that you need to be aware of and write them down. Performance goals, are there particular amounts of distances that you want to cover? Do you want to get up to a certain miles a week? Do you want to have a half marathon goal? Do you have a 10K goal? Do you have a marathon goal or even an Ironman goal? Occasionally I will get a cyclist as well. And so if you are a cyclist, what does that look like for you? Is there a certain distance that you want to cover, or also watts that you want to have and the power that you want to have? So also think about those things. I also encourage, whenever we're looking at our goals, think about your ideal level of wellness. What does that look like for you? If you could think of one day that goes perfectly and you are doing all the things that you know that you need, if that's a morning ritual, a work startup ritual that you have, if that is a work shutdown ritual, think about those things. And if that is an evening ritual, how many hours of sleep are you getting each night? I always encourage that somebody thinks about these things, and also think about, where are you at right now? And what is that goal like? And how wide is that gap that you're trying to cover or to close? It's really important to also think about it so that way they are realistic, and that way you can set SMART goals as well for yourself. I also encourage each runner to think about, what kind of person do you want to be like or described as? I think that's also really important. And I think a lot of times as runners or athletes, we can forget about these things as well. And I always encourage that a runner dives back into who they are as a person and what do they want to be like in the next 10, even 25 and 50 years, because that's going to be a big part of who we are still, or if running is still going to be a big part of you. I think it's really important to always think about that, because running may come in and out of our lives as well. And we need to understand how to be people and human beings in this world, and how do we want to show up in this world, right? Or if we're injured and we don't necessarily feel like a runner because we're not running, what are the things that are going to anchor us down into our wellness? We cannot just describe our health as whenever we're running. Our health stays with us even when we're not running. So I hope that really resonates with you guys tonight. I also encourage to think about, why is this particular goal or these goals important for you to do this year in 2021? I know that 2020 definitely threw a big curveball at us, and many of us were unprepared, including myself, for what it was going to bring. And so why is it important to take back these things or build off of the year that we had? One of my clients recently, they told me that they thought that 2020 was going to be their year. They had 3 great races planned for themselves. They already had hotels booked and everything. And if you're behind the screen nodding your head and you can resonate with that, I know that you're probably going into 2021 with a little bit of fire in your belly. And I encourage you to definitely think about this particular slide right here, because I think it's going to help you a lot into staying motivated through the rest of the year. If you're somebody that's already feeling this lack of motivation with running going into 2021, and you're trying to find that motivation again, I always encourage to review, what do you want 2021 to be like? Do you still want to be laying against the floor with your face facing the floor, or do you want to start making the strides to get back up and dust yourself off? Again, when it comes to motivation, this one is a big one too. I always encourage that people understand their motivation, and I ask a lot of questions about this as well whenever we have a call together. It's, did something happen recently that has prompted you to achieve these goals? Did something happen? And that could be anything from, maybe you had a long run that didn't go as planned? Did you have a lot of salting out? Did you feel dizzy midway? Did you have a bathroom issue midway in your long run? Another thing that I hear a lot as well is somebody not feeling great when they got to the restaurant and they didn't know what to order. They were completely confused and dumbfounded and couldn't make a decision. And so they felt like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I got here. I need to reach out for help now. It can be basically anything. And I think this was one that, again, I always like to ask people as soon as they meet me is, what prompted you to reach out? Was there anything in particular that has happened that maybe I need to know about, and so forth? What makes your goals really important to you? Why are these goals, again, very important to you? And what would happen if you did not achieve these things? What are you afraid of happening, or what do you not want to happen should you do not achieve these goals? And I think this last question is something that many people do not think about, because I think sometimes when we don't have goals, it makes us comfortable, and that feels better than feeling uncomfortable. I know a lot of times whenever I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials, this question popped up is, nothing would happen to me, but what would I leave on the table? And I think whenever I started to answer that question, it really propelled me into trying harder and trying one more time, continuously trying, because I knew what I was leaving on the table, not just for myself, but for my community at large. And that was important to me. Overcoming challenges. This is another question I love to ask as well. And it's, what might get in the way of you reaching your vision? And I think sometimes a lot of people can definitely answer these things. It could be family obligations, festivities, the holidays, the new year. It could even be ourselves as well, thinking that, man, I don't even know if I have the capacity to achieve these goals. So we're already having those doubts within us. And I think sometimes that's a big barrier as well, is seeing ourselves as the challenge. But then I always like to ask, what strengths can you draw on to help you overcome these obstacles? I remember asking my sister a couple of things about myself, and the first thing she said actually was, I don't think this is a good question for sisters, but I'm going to tell you. And she said that sometimes I can tend to be a perfectionist, and that is the challenge I'm always having to overcome. And then she said, but you're actually very creative and determined. And so whenever I share those things, I think a lot of people do see themselves as resilient. They are determined, they are hardworking, and so forth. And those things count for something here, especially when it comes to running and for nutrition. One of the things I like to also say that I am is I'm dependable and I'm a committed person. So I think whenever we start to really dive into these challenges, we need to always draw back onto our strengths. One of my clients actually, I found that she was always second guessing herself and self-doubting. A lot of the times when she would do something really well, she would come back and say something negative. And then I told her that whenever we had a group call together with other people, she always was so encouraging for other people. And I couldn't understand why she could not be as encouraging for herself. And so I told her, it's not that that the challenge is that you self-doubt, but one of your greatest strengths is that you're always willing to give a compliment. We just need to reframe the process for yourself. And so I think even understanding those kinds of things as well, and having somebody to support you in that process, can do a lot for someone. So the next slide. So paving the way. And so what are the steps that you need to take to reach your goal? So if you took your goal and you're writing it down today, I want you to also think about, what are the things that you need to do to start to achieve and chip away at that goal? Is sleep one of them? Right now, are you sleeping 4 hours a day? Do we need to get up to 6 hours? Even though optimally we know that we need 7+, maybe 7 hours is not in your cards right now, but can you make a commitment to yourself that instead of getting 4 hours, you can get 6? Or if you're getting 5 hours right now, can you make a commitment to get 6 and go to an earlier bedtime? This was actually something that I did with a client this morning, and he's going to bed at midnight, waking up at 7 a.m., sorry. And I encouraged him to set an alarm for 11 and to be in bed by 11:30. So even small tangible steps like that can definitely be more encouraging to see versus saying, well, you're not getting 8, you need to get 8. It's not always that easy. So if you're thinking that, I'm definitely on your side. I think sometimes we do need to have smaller steps before we get to that end goal that we're aspiring to have. The other thing I encourage is self-care. What is your self-care routine? And I think self-care is definitely a thrown around word a lot of the time, but one way I like to always encourage this is, what have you done for yourself that is fun, that you purely enjoy? It can be as selfish as possible, but have you done something that is enjoyable and fun for you? What was the last thing that you did that made you laugh? And so forth. Because I think when we find joy in these small things, we're more open and willing to do it again and again. One of the things that one of my clients does is, we talked about self-care with her over the weekend, and she actually said, I've been going on walks with my husband after the end of my day and before we go grocery shopping, and he drops me off and I call him, and she said that that's my self-care, and I took it. I think that's amazing, and I think that's awesome. So I think even thinking about things that bring you so much joy, how can we add that in more often too? When it comes to stress management, this is another one that I find that many athletes and runners do have. Runners are definitely perfectionists and very goal-oriented people. So we strive for the best and the most out of ourselves. And sometimes that can lead to stressful situations or daily stressful encounters. So I always encourage stress management. And with stress management, this can always be some other options like journaling, having a routine down can also help with reducing anxiety. And even the self-care part can also be part of stress management. I think if somebody is just using running as a stress management tool, I think that is definitely a good thing. But then I also have to be the devil's advocate, the challenger here. And I always ask, well, what would happen if you got injured? What would happen if your coach told you to lower your mileage? Would you think about it differently? Would you still be thinking about it as a stress management tool? Or are you thinking about it in a way that you have to run X amount of miles in order to burn calories? Because then it's no longer a stress management tool. It's a body control and food control tool. So I always have to challenge some narratives, but I always encourage thinking about other ways to manage your stress. And again, that's journaling. I also encourage morning routines, evening routines as well. What does that look like if you need that? Work startup and shutdown routines, because I think right now with COVID-19, a lot of people have had a really hard time with creating those healthy boundaries with work, family life, and personal life. And also, what do we need to feel good and to put these things into place? If we're working all hours of the day, we have a really hard time getting to sleep. We have a hard time feeling awake and reducing that brain fog or that fatigue in the morning. So I've been encouraging a lot of healthy boundaries around work and home life. And I find that work startup and shutdown routines are particularly helpful. Other things I also encourage are sports nutrition options. And what I mean by this too is, what kind of sports nutrition things are you needing to implement? Is that a pre-run snack? Is that an electrolyte usage on your long runs? Do you know that you need that, and have you been doing it? Because I think a lot of people do know that they need certain things, but the action is not happening. So we need to also explore, why is it not happening, and what do you know that you need to? The other thing I encourage here is, we're going to move into avoid getting caught in the diet cycle. So I always encourage, don't make the same mistake twice. And I find that whenever we're moving into the new year, sometimes we can think, well, Whole30 worked for me. But then I always have to ask, well, are you still doing that? And normally people will say no. And then I ask, well, what was it about this Whole30 that is not working for you? And then they'll tell me all of the things. And that actually means that it actually does not work for you. It worked for a period of time to do this thing, but to be a sustainable an option for someone, or a practical option, that's not working. So that means that we need to find something else. And that could be not doing Whole30 again. So this is what I mean by don't make the same mistake twice. So I always encourage, again, reviewing some of the things, like, are there any programs, diets, or self-help things like detoxes? I know a lot of people do at-home juice cleanses and things like that at this time of year. Have you done those in the past? What did you not like or like about them? Why did they stop working for you? Did it get in the way of family dinners, working at home or in the office? Were you having to purchase additional supplements, and did it get too costly and expensive? Were there birthdays that came up? Did it take too much time, or take too much of your time to go and drive and pick up the thing and then unload it and so forth? You enjoying the other things in your life too. Did it remove a lot of that quality time with your partner? Did it remove the time with your friends? Did it remove leisure time in your life that you actually really value? So I think those are some questions that I always encourage people to think about whenever they're getting that itch to go back and do a New Year's diet. Okay, and then this slide is more about reasons runner clients have reached out for help. So I was reviewing a lot of the applications that I get and the people who have become my clients, and these are some of the reasons that they have said that they became my client, or things that prompted them to reach out. And so they've said that they felt stuck and bored of food, needing help with meals that fit their family. They've worked with someone in the past that wasn't a runner. And so they now wanted to work with somebody who understood their needs and what it was like to increase mileage, what a long run felt like, and how much hunger they're having. Because before, other dietitians or other nutritionists or health coaches didn't understand what the hunger was like and putting them on low calorie stuff. They're tired of counting calories, meals, snacks, fruits. They need a plan that fits their lifestyle as a runner. They want accountability. A big race is coming up for them. They need help with motivation, self-care, or putting everything together. So they already know all of the things that they need to do. They just are unsure of what to do or if they're doing the right thing. Many times, I find that runners are very, very smart people. I find that a lot of my clients are very interesting, very smart people, and they've done all the research. They've Googled everything. They've read a lot of things. They definitely know what a carbohydrate is, a fat, and a protein, but putting it together is just much more difficult than they may have thought, or just still feeling really confused and unsure of what route to take for themselves. So normally, whenever I have a new client, these are some of the reasons that they've reached out for help and that they become my client. If you know what to do and you're just not doing it, so just like that person that I described, you're over researching, Googling, maybe looking at influencers or people on social media for help here, training partners, sometimes coaches as well can give advice that maybe is not helpful for you as a runner or to your needs. So again, these things could be contributing to an overload of information and lead to paralysis in your action taking process. So I think this is a really big one for a lot of people. Again, just like I said, my runner clients are very smart and interesting people, and they definitely know about nutrition, but all of these different sources coming into them on a daily basis or on a weekly basis is just kind of throwing them for a loop, and they're unsure of what to do. So what I wanted to do with you guys is show you a little bit more about the Fuel for More nutrition program and how the roadmap works. And so I've actually never ever showed this to most people. And I think it'll be really fun to show you guys a little bit more about this. In my last workshop series, one of the biggest things that people answered in one of my surveys was that they wanted a roadmap and they wanted to have accountability and support in a group. And so I found like, hey, I'm going to have to share and, be a little bit more vulnerable with how I share with how I move my clients along and not keep it so secret. So this is a big first for me. And you guys are the first people to see it. So I also talked about in the emails as well as having a 5-step fueling process that we cover together. So within the roadmap, I look at everything within a 5-step process. And that's really looking at a lot of different things that the runner is coming to me with. What is their current nutrition like? What are their goals? And what do I need to move them along to do? So the first step that I try to really encourage is learning what foods and meals to eat that fit the runner's goals and or exercise needs. So I'll ask, what does your daily nutrition look like? And what kind of exercise are you doing? How much is it? How many miles are you doing on a long run day? Tell me about that. Are you feeling exhausted, tired, having GI symptoms? I'll ask all of these questions. The other thing I'll start to ask about is hydration and what does that look like? Are you needing sport-specific hydration recommendations that are strategic for your everyday runs, long runs, and workouts? So I'll start to really probe around and see, do you salt out a lot? Do I need to encourage more electrolytes for you? Are you having salty cravings and so forth? Do you want more crunchy items? And then I'll start to also ask a couple more things around hydration. The next thing I'll ask about is how to keep up with your energy needs. Are you doing this? Do you understand what a hunger cue is? Are you afraid of fullness cues as well? I'll ask about how these things are working out when your mileage changes, or I'll observe along with you too. And whenever I have a client journal, that's really what we're doing is we're following along this roadmap or journey that the client has been on, and we'll go through the journal systems together and see how everything is moving forward. If there's a little hiccup in the road, I'll always go back and see what are some of the things that we need to change or pivot for. I'll also ask about, is somebody feeling energized in their training cycle? Are they feeling great on a run, but then they're feeling really, really exhausted the rest of the day? So those are also key things I'll ask about. It's mood and energy too. I'll ask about recovery time and also encourage, how are we going to optimize your nutrition to improve your recovery time? Again, this is a big thing that many runners struggle with because of lack of appetite. They're just not hungry. Maybe they feel like they didn't run enough after to eat enough as well. So I always try to see what is going on there. What is the actual barrier to the recovery nutrition first? And then we'll start to optimize that as well. The next thing I'll do, which is the last step, is really, really try to see what kind of sports specific things that person needs. Do they want to have supplements? Do they need a supplement? And what are those things like? If somebody's going to need a vitamin, a specific electrolyte option, which I do have clients that need more specific electrolyte options than Noon based off of their needs. And then what are the supplements that I maybe need to encourage, or if they're open to it too. If somebody has a lot of supplement questions, I'll go ahead and answer and educate, and I'll always try to fit somebody's budget, or if somebody is not really wanting to use them and they'd rather go another route. That's also something that I need to keep in mind as well. So the roadmap for the Fuel for More program, not sure if you guys can see it, so I'm gonna make it a smaller thumbnail. Perfect. So the Fuel for More roadmap program, in the first month of working together, we'll take a 360 look view of your nutrition. And so this will be me looking at clearly allowing you to clearly define lifestyle and performance goals. You're also going to be able to understand how current nutrition is impacting performance and life goals, understand nutrition and energy needs for performance, education on macronutrients for lifestyle goals, gain awareness of hunger and fullness around meal times, understand how to create balanced meals that fit seamlessly as well, and then also start to understand the basics of fueling for performance. So pre-run snacks for carb nutrition, post-run snacks, and things like that. I get a lot of questions on pre-run snacks, and one thing I can really say about that is that is something that is important for a runner, but I do find that if I encourage a banana with peanut butter and I have a client that does not trust a banana or is scared to eat a whole banana or a half a banana, I have to understand and help that client reframe and figure out what is it about the banana. Do they believe it has too much sugar? Is too much carb? Do they have GI issues with it, and so forth? So really understanding how much nutrition education this person needs as well. So it's not just like giving out all kinds of recommendations for this. I need to understand where is that person coming from as well. And so this is why I encourage really this kind of roadmap as well. So that way at the end of our first month, should I need to encourage a pre-run snack, I already know all of the other things that person is also experiencing alongside food. In the second month, you'll also be able to establish habits that support your performance goals. So this is beginning to create habits around sleep, stress, and self-care, be able to independently meet energy and nutrient needs for everyday nutrition. Are you able to do that independently? Start to implement more running specific fueling also independently. Adjust nutrition based on the weekly training cycle changes. So if somebody's going up, are they able to cue in on hunger and fullness cues and increase? And then I'll also be able to support and instruct how much and when would that start to happen for that person. I'll also address exercise-induced GI issues as well. So if you're somebody that has a lot of problems on runs or on everyday runs, that's also important. So we'll start to address those and figure that out together. And then encourage and implement hunger and fullness cues through hunger scale. And then I'll also start to really walk you through the 10 principles of intuitive eating. And are we going through that framework seamlessly? What are the areas that I see you really doing well with? And what are the areas that you may be struggling with as well? And where can I support you in that next month together? In the third month, you'll be able to apply and adapt nutrition more independently as well. So this is where things become more sustainable for that person. Are they consistently meeting energy needs? Know which foods cause GI issues on runs and workouts? Do you know which foods are most satisfying for you and keep you full? Know how to adjust foods and meals based on hunger and fullness and training cycle? Do you know which lifestyle rituals fulfill your needs for low stress and improved self-care and sleep? Are you able to implement foods and meals that are seamlessly added to weekly nutrition? Have you built up a toolkit of reframing stress and food guilt around your food? And then can you complete and understand the 10 principles of intuitive eating also on your own? How are you feeling around that and so forth? So this is just 3 months worth. And with some clients, I will say that some of them are able to meet it. And then sometimes it just takes a little bit longer depending on their goals, or we'll continuously add and add in new things based off of goals that are continuously changing. I will say that right now, because of COVID, many clients have added on past the third month because COVID has really, I think, thrown people for a loop, or needing more support emotionally, mentally, or even still needing help with certain goals that do take a little bit longer to fulfill as well. So I wanted to share a quick client success story here. I have a client right now, and we are working in our 4th month together. She came to me at the beginning of September, and she was needing some more help with certain things. And so she is a female ultra and trail runner in her mid to late 30s. She works at a coffee roastery, and she's on her feet most hours of the day. She also, I did not include here, aside from trail running and ultra running, she likes to go hiking as well. So that was something we also needed to consider. Her immediate goals, so things that she wants to achieve right away are, and these are actually her words actually. She said, I'd really like to work on fueling pre, post, and during workouts. I especially struggle on back-to-back long run days. Her long-term goals were feeling fueled on long runs with no GI issues, recovering well and having the energy to sustain the training that I like to do without stressing about whether I'm eating the right thing would be fab. And then her struggles, she said, knowing what to eat, knowing when to eat, and knowing how much to eat. This is also a very common struggle that I hear. Her primary motivation, so her why, is I haven't been running much, but I'm looking to start back up soon. I figured now is a good time to work on this before I try and ramp up mileage. I'm hoping to dial in fueling and hydration for long runs, as well as pre and post fueling. So these were some of the things that she had shared immediately. And then when I started to really work with her, these were issues that she needed help with. But there was so much more underneath the initial assessment and the application that she was really struggling with. She just didn't have the language to describe what was actually happening until we started to probe more. So one of the things that we first did was I took a 360-degree view of her nutrition and looked at it with her. She wasn't very hungry prior to going to work, and sometimes had nutrition, sometimes she did, sometimes she didn't. It just depended on how much time she had. She would sometimes take lunch and eat at work, or would wait until she got home in early afternoon to eat something. She would get very hungry prior to afternoon workouts and runs. She had sweet cravings in the afternoon and after dinner. She had minimal veggies at most of her meals, so we definitely had to encourage more vegetables. She's also a plant-based runner, and so that was really interesting as well. When I was looking at her logs, was she described herself primarily as a plant-based runner, but there was not enough vegetables in her daily diet, or even just plants in general. So she was really struggling there. She also didn't know what to do for her protein. She would get stuck, and then sometimes she was able to get some new options in there, but then she just got stuck again, and she would get bored with her protein options as a plant-based runner. And she had some knowledge of electrolytes and carbohydrate needs during her long runs on weekends. Just like what she said, she didn't have any GI issues, so she was pretty good there. We just had to actually bump up her needs. And she would sometimes stress and overthink her meals. So she would second guess her fullness, how much to put on her plate, how much she should leave off her plate, and so forth. She was just really unsure about those things. And she was in the process of instilling more body positive and body acceptance as a runner. And so some of the things that we have done since her starting with me since September is, and so now we're actually on month 4. And so we've increased her protein at breakfast. We simplified her lunch and dinner options. Before, she was trying to cook up a storm and going to work, and sometimes she would have leftovers, sometimes she didn't, but she would get so tired that she didn't want to make something else. So we simplified her lunch and dinner options. And now she takes dinner leftovers as her lunch, or she has a snack and then she comes home. We did a lot of education on vegan and other plant-based proteins. We increased her energy and carb needs at lunch and snack time to help with her sugar cravings. We discussed her menstrual cycle symptoms and cravings as well, and how to manage these symptoms. And we also talked about what was actually happening hormonally. I do this a lot as well with my male clients. Just also instructing, whenever we have recovery nutrition, it's actually optimizing our hormones. And so that is really important for both men and women to understand, is these very basic fueling things, they're actually setting up yourself for very, very healthy and normal hormone levels long-term. So if you don't get anything out of today's session, I hope that definitely sticks with you guys, because this is a big one. We also worked through and discussed cravings and emotional eating at the end of day and dinner time. We discussed the ease of implementation of new options with her partner, and I think that was a big one for her. She knew that her partner was going to eat anything that she made, but she wanted to make sure that she was also meeting his needs. And so we also applied an intuitive eating framework when she was unsure of what kind of meals she wants or needs. providing balance of foods she loves and needs for performance. So one of her favorite snacks is an Oreo and a Icelandic yogurt, and that is one of her favorite things to eat. Ever since we've talked about having an all foods fit approach with her, she has done really well with having something that has chocolate or that is sweet with something that is more in alignment with her performance. We've also reviewed a lot of hydration and energy needs on long runs, incorporated electrolyte guidance for her daily hydration, pre-run snacks, post-run and dinner recommendations as well. We talked a lot about this too on her weekends, because I find that runners do really well Monday through Friday because there's more structure. And then because there's less structure on Saturday and Sundays, either there's no lunch or dinner's really early, and then there's a lot of snacking happening at dinner time or after dinner. So we talked a lot about that with her too. I also encourage the addition of more macronutrients or certain ones based off of her miles per week. We look at her training plan together and we review potential areas for nutrition gaps. And this is something that, because I'm also a runner, I'm able to step in and say, hey, when we get to 20 miles, you're going to feel this kind of hunger. You're going to have this potential kind of hunger. And that's going to be different when you get to 40 miles a week and up. And then it's going to change again when you get to 55 and 60 miles up a week. And so being aware of that too for the client, so that way when my client gets to that amount of mileage or that intensity, they're not second guessing themselves and beating themselves up about their hunger. They're actually able to think about it in a more rational way and take more action versus second guessing. We also discuss her energy needs, as she has a goal of changing her body composition. That is something that she has vocalized that she wants to do. So one of the things that we had to really review before doing that was make sure that she was eating enough, that she had reduced her stress around food, that she had reduced her stress around how her body looked, and really, getting to what was she hoping her body composition would allow her to achieve. And what was this particular body composition like? So having her describe it to me and what did she want to happen? Again, we also talked about discussing and educating her on body positivity, body acceptance, body image, and addressing struggles that come up throughout the week or every so often when she's on a long run or every so often when she's around other runners just like her. So that was a big thing that we still continuously discuss, and that I do discuss a lot with many of my runners, male and female. So some of the next steps I can encourage after today, again, I definitely want to make sure that I am on time. Let me check the time, 7:46, awesome, okay. So I am going to be sending out a survey, and I'm going to be also sending out a replay of today's presentation. So if you got in a little bit late, don't worry, you're going to be able to see this for 72 hours. I'm going to let it play for 3 days for you guys. And hopefully you guys review it and let me know your thoughts on it. I'm going to be asking, again, what did you think about the presentation? Did you find it helpful? And so forth. And again, if you guys have any questions about anything that I shared today, you're more than welcome to send me an email at starla@thehealthyshine.com. I promise I do actually reply to the emails as well, so please feel free to send them. And then again, I invite you to show up for yourself, be healthy, and shine. Again, thanks guys, awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share, and then I'm also going